She unknowingly shared her heart with a stranger, revealing a love story worth millions. In the dim light of the emergency room, Sarah's hands moved with practiced speed, her focus sharp despite the exhaustion pulling her eyelids down like weights. Another long night, her second job at the nursing home looming just hours away. She had allowed herself to dream of a simpler life, where her mother's ailment didn't steal them both of their youth. The long shifts felt punitive, but a gnawing guilt pinched at her heart. What kept her awake more was the very thought of her mother, frail and aching, waiting for her to come home. Each moment she spent behind the sterile, cold ER walls was a quiet rebellion against the life her mother had envisioned for them both. The fluorescent lights hummed like a swarm of angry bees, buzzing reminders of her relentless responsibility. "You can give up," a nagging voice whispered, but she bristled against it. "You need to keep going." Being a nurse was honoring the promises she made to the woman who formed her core, yet each breath of determination was tinged with desperation. Was there a limit to her resilience before she crumbled beneath the weight of it all? Pushing through the double doors, she caught a glimpse of the community center from her car window, its warmth beckoning her like a siren. Volunteering there had revived her, if only for a moment. Little did she know, meeting Jake that day would challenge her fraught existence in ways she hadn't anticipated. Beautifully unkempt hair and fervent eyes brimmed with passion. He was a lost soul, just like her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As they began to weave through shared trauma and dreams of revival, the tender embrace of hope warmed her heart. But soon after, as they sifted through old memories in her mother's attic, a mounted pressure rolled through her. In her search for relics of the past, she uncovered a dusty letter that captured the possibility of restoring a long-forgotten parcel of land. A legacy, one tied to her mother's youth, beckoned them to undertake this ambitious endeavor, if only her dwindling confidence would permit it. Yet whispers of doubt clouded her excitement, the grappling angst of pursuing a shared dream and possibly tainting their lives with the weight of their family's pasts spooling in her mind. As they unraveled plans, she fought against a chaotic internal dialogue. Was she simply surrendering to another familial trap, or allowing herself to escape? The thought of failure curled in her stomach like a coiling serpent ready to strike. Their blossoming partnership surged with tension, aggravated by small-town skeptics. Her heart raced as the looming disapproval suffocated her budding vulnerability. Could she abandon all she worked for, not only to restore her mother's memory, but also risk her own heart? Just when everything began to seem manageable, whispers from the past threatened to break the tenuous resolve they had formed. A crucial connection between their families emerged, pulling her into a whirlpool of suspicion and anguish. Would confessing this lead them further apart? Sarah stood on the brink of losing everything, the love that felt so right throwing her into turmoil. A tempest of uncertainty churned deep within her, as she realized hope could transform into despair in the mere blink of an eye. The weight of the dusty letter lingered in Sarah's hands, the paper inscribed with ink that had yellowed like memories, fading into obscurity. It carried not just news of land, but also the potential to unearth buried feelings, ones she had nearly forgotten in her relentless pursuit of survival. The past, with all its entanglements, loomed before her like a shadowy figure, demanding acknowledgement. She was poised on the brink of an abyss. A leap into the unknown might either bring liberation or plunge her deeper into chaos. Jake's voice broke through the suffocating silence, offering ideas laced with optimism. "Sarah, this land could be the start of something new. We could transform it together." His enthusiasm was infectious, but a cold dread twisted within her. There was no denying a twinge of excitement, a fluttering hope that perhaps the land held the key to not just financial restitution for her family, but also emotional redemption. Yet, the nagging voice of caution echoed louder. What if their shared endeavor unraveled like delicate thread, leading to more than just ruin but heartbreak? Every encounter held the potential for a turning point. And now, with Jake by her side, a faint outline of purpose began to take form. Yet, could she trust him fully? The connection between their families ignited a flame of doubt. Would he see her as merely her mother's daughter, or as an individual worthy of pursuing her own dreams? Contemplating was one thing, but acting required a level of vulnerability that threatened to tear away the carefully constructed walls around her heart. As days passed, she noticed subtle shifts in her focus. The frowns of the local skeptics felt piercing. Each skeptical glance stood as an indictment against her aspirations. Her conversations with Jake deepened, layered with further scrutiny as they both sought to ascertain their roles in this unsteady partnership. Each meeting weighed heavier with the implicit question: if their families had shared so much turmoil, was she about to embark on a journey doomed to replicate those patterns of despair? One evening, as she leafed through the letter again, the courage bubbling within her crystallized into clarity. She understood now that confronting the past might be the only way to recast her future. They would need to meet face to face with the ghosts of their families, to wrestle with histories that begged for resolution. It would take a delicate dance of honesty and heartbreak, but perhaps, just perhaps, it could lead to a revival of sorts. Their stories intertwined like roots digging deep into the soil. She felt a surge of resolve pushing against the tide of uncertainty. Instead of shrinking from the mounting dread, she could face it head on. There was something undeniably empowering about that realization. Freedom often demanded risk. In her next conversation with Jake, she would lay bare her fears, confront the familial shadows, and redefine their path, together. Yet lying awake that night, a sense of foreboding settled in her chest. What if laying herself bare pushed Jake away instead of drawing him closer? What if this acknowledgement unraveled the fragile connection they had built? As determination coursed through her veins, she couldn't shake the feeling that encroaching storm clouds would soon converge, putting everything she dreamed of in jeopardy. The dawn of their conversation approached, and Sarah's heart raced with anticipation. Would she find the strength to share her truths, or would her fears once again tie her down? As the sun broke the horizon, illuminating the path ahead, she could only grip the letter tighter, steeling herself for the reckoning to come. The unraveling was inevitable. She could only hope it would lead to renewal rather than despair. Was she strong enough to face what waited beyond that uncertain horizon? The room was flooded with the first light of dawn, a stark contrast to the swirling haze of doubts that clouded Sarah's mind. She took a deep breath, willing herself to rise from the disquietude that had molded her nights. Today was the day she would confront Jake. Each flicker of anticipation pulsed through her veins, urging her to embrace the possibilities while questioning her resolve. As she prepared, Sarah recalled the last time she had felt truly seen amid such vulnerability. Her childhood was a puzzle of shadows and light, yet being honest had never equated to safety. She recalled her mother's warnings about emotional exposure. Some wounds were best left unexamined. But here now that childhood caution felt like a shackle. She needed to break free. Making her way to the local diner, she rehearsed the words she'd spoken hundreds of times, yet this felt different. This wasn't idle chit-chat. It was a deliberate act of courage. Each heartbeat echoed the sentiment. Would this act bind her to Jake or isolate her further in the web of family history? As she entered, the clinking of dishes mingled with murmurs of laughter. There was Jake, seated at their usual spot, looking eager, yet contemplative. His eyes lit up upon noticing her, yet they quickly morphed into a look of concern, perhaps sensing the weight she carried. He gestured for her to join him, and she took a seat, deliberately maintaining eye contact, suppressing her instinct to look away. "Good morning," Jake said, his voice steady. "Ready to talk about the land?" Sarah swallowed hard, her thoughts racing. "Actually, we need to talk about more than that." The magnitude of her words caught her off guard. A softness flashed across Jake's features, as if he understood instinctively that moments like these shaped futures. He leaned forward slightly, encouraging her to continue. There was an openness in his demeanor, a silent promise that he was willing to be there, despite the weighty shadows of their families. What is it? Fingers trembling, she reached across the table for the letter. Its aged paper crackled as she unfolded it, revealing the words like secrets meant to be shared. This isn't just about land. It's about why it matters. My family has faced so much loss, much of which I've tried to ignore. I can't pretend it doesn't haunt me anymore. Jake took a breath, listening intently, his eyes reflecting understanding rather than judgment. I get that. There are ghosts in my family too. Maybe meeting them head-on is the first step? He spoke with a sincerity that struck her, reigniting a flicker of hope. This was not just about the past, it was about weaving a new narrative together. For the first time, she dared to believe that confronting those specters might not just be a personal excavation, but a partnership forged in truth. As they conversed, Sarah felt something emerge, an unexpected confidence navigating through vulnerability. She shared fragments of her past, the misunderstandings, the heartbreak, and the moments of fleeting joy. Jake reciprocated, weaving his own tales into the fabric of their dialogue. They began to map out the complexities of their family's histories, acknowledging the messy truths that defined them. Each revelation chipped away at her skepticism, but an uncertainty lingered, folding itself into a new apprehension. What if this forged connection remained an illusion, a mere distraction from the realities they bore? Yet, within the flow of their conversation, Sarah discovered something vital. Her voice held power. The act of sharing not only liberated her, but wove a thread of trust between them, slowly intertwining their destinies. As their discussion deepened, she felt a warmth expanding within her, a dawning realization that this path could be an antidote to her familial scars. But as she glanced out the window, noticing distant storm clouds brewing, the weight of her fears returned. Could such newfound resolve withstand external pressures, or would it be swept away? The time for uncertain thoughts was running out. Their eyes locked, and Sarah realized the echoes of their pasts would soon collide. The moment of truth lingered ahead, rich with promise, yet fraught with peril. "Are we ready to face them, then?" she asked, her voice steady yet laced with uncertainty. "Yes," Jake replied, a determined sincerity framing his expression. Together. But as they stepped forward, an unsettling question began to crystallize in her mind. Would their united front be enough to withstand the storm that loomed ahead? The moment hung in the air, teetering between promise and dread. Sarah felt an odd mixture of exhilaration and fear. Her heart surged at the prospect of confronting their pasts together, yet a disquieting nag stirred at her instincts. Would unveiling their histories strengthen their bond, or serve as a wedge between them? As they left the diner, the fresh air felt different, charged with potential but thick with uncertainty. Jake matched her pace, his presence grounding her even as they stepped into unfamiliar territory. They discussed logistics, timelines, and the practicalities of reaching out to their families. But under each syllable lay a current of vulnerability and unspoken fears. Sarah's mind raced, 1,000 thoughts clamoring for attention. The swirling doubts from earlier crept in again. Could her fragile courage withstand the inevitable fallout of exposing their family histories? What if the fragile trust they had cultivated shattered under the weight of revelations that might be too much to bear? Jake turned to her, sensing the shift in her demeanor. "What's going through your mind?" His tone was firm yet gentle, his inquiry inviting her to lay bare her vulnerability. "Just wondering if we're really ready for this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if our families don't want to face the past? What if they don't want to talk?" His gaze remained steady. "Not every conversation leads to reconciliation, but it can't hurt to try, right? Isn't that what we're doing? Stepping out of the shadows and allowing ourselves to confront what's been holding us back?" His conviction in the importance of facing their histories ignited a spark within her. She admired his courage, but questioned her ability to match it. Perhaps the journey she needed to embrace was not just about confronting her family's ghosts, but also about discovering her own capacity for resilience and confrontation. Beneath her self-doubt lay the raw and unfamiliar terrain of self-acceptance. They returned to her family home, the towering structure standing like a sentinel of memories. As they crossed the threshold, Sarah's heart raced, an unsettling blend of anticipation and dread. It felt like stepping onto the battlefield of her past, where emotional landmines lurked waiting for the right moment to explode. She paused at the door, her breath caught in her throat. What if this changes everything? Jake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Maybe it will. Maybe it has to. Change doesn't have to be a bad thing, Sarah. Sometimes it's what sets you free. His support bolstered her resolve. Maybe this wasn't just about her family. It was about the chains she had worn for so long. A flicker of ancient power kindled within her. Okay, she said, straightening her spine. Let's do this. They stepped inside, the familiar scent of aged wood and distant laughter welcoming her back. She hesitated at the threshold, a rush of memories flooding her. Faces of relatives, the laughter of childhood, the echoes of sorrow intertwined with joy. The tapestry of her life seemed alive, and it urged her to embrace all of it. As they settled in the living room, the conversation began to unfold. Each shared story peeled back layers of her hesitance, revealing a raw honesty about their families. They laughed, cried, and allowed the heaviness to settle in the room like a welcomed guest. Gradually, Sarah sensed a shift within herself. She started to reclaim parts of her identity that had felt lost for years. She realized she had the strength to face whatever turmoil awaited her. The ghostly shadows of her family history began to flicker, fading with each shared truth. Then a sudden silence fell over the room as her mother entered. A flicker of surprise painted across her face. A tension traveled through the air, thickening the atmosphere in a way that felt almost tangible. "Sarah," her mother began, voice trembling. "What are you doing here with him?" The unexpected intrusion plunged her into a new wave of anxiety, unraveling the day's fragile achievements. In the flickering light of the living room, Sarah was faced with a question she'd never anticipated but desperately needed to address. Could she truly embrace her family's past, or would her mother's expectations cast her back into shadows once more? The ground beneath her felt unstable, and for a moment Sarah realized she was on the brink of an emotional precipice. How would she respond to the storm that had just emerged? The weight of her mother's stare penetrated deeper than any cutting remark could. Every gaze in the room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for Sarah to respond. She could feel the quivering thread of her self-identity being stretched, her newfound resolve met head-on by the remnants of her past. "Mom," she started, gathering her thoughts like shards of broken glass. "I'm here because Jake and I both want to understand where we come from. We need to confront the things we've avoided for too long." Her mother's expression tightened, apprehension flashing through those familiar features. "Confront? You think you can just dive into the past like that? You don't understand how deep this goes, Sarah. There are things that could hurt you." Sarah swallowed hard, resisting the urge to retreat behind her mother's protective wall, just as she had done so many times before. "I know there's pain, Mom, but I also know there's strength in facing it. I can't keep being afraid of what the past might bring. Losing the fear is the only way I can move forward." Jake, standing steadfastly beside her, could sense the emotional chasm widening between mother and daughter. He shifted slightly, positioning himself as a barrier against the fears threatening to engulf Sarah. She glanced at him, recognizing the silent support glowing in his eyes. It fortified her resolve. "It's not just about me, you know. It's about all of us. Wouldn't you want to know why we are the way we are? Why we feel so lost?" Sarah's voice trembled, but it was no longer void of conviction. Her mother's shoulders dropped, racked with the weight of unspoken truths. The tension in the room felt almost electric, crackling as raw emotions surged beneath the surface. "You really don't understand," her mother whispered. "It's not just about memories. It's about choices made that have the power to alter the course of our lives." "That's exactly it," Sarah interjected, her heart hammering. "It's about making choices that shape who we are and who we can become." If I can't dig through the pain, how do I hope to find out who I am? The silence that followed was thick, as if the living room itself were processing her words. In that prolonged moment, Sarah felt her heart pound fiercely against her ribcage. The emotional precipice she had stepped onto seemed treacherously unstable, yet liberating at the same time. Her mother's gaze softened, revealing a flicker of regret layered under that maternal instinct to protect. You think it will be easy? What if you find something you don't want to know? Maybe, Sarah replied, her voice low and steady. But it's my choice to find it out. I'm ready to face what's real even if it's terrifying. As Jake's presence enfolded them, a new warmth emerged in the air. And we'll face it together, he promised softly, taking her hand as a signal of solidarity. Her mother's expression transformed into one of fierce contemplation. The walls around Sarah's heart, built up through years of avoidance, began to crack. Then perhaps, her mother finally said, the fight draining from her voice, you deserve to know. You've grown so much, Sarah. Maybe it's time for me to uncover the past as well. These words sparked a flicker of hope in Sarah, igniting a small fire in her chest that had long been extinguished. Yet the path ahead was still fogged with uncertainty. Would unveiling these buried questions lead to healing, or would it unleash chaos that could drive a wedge between them? Another moment passed, and Sarah understood that this journey would demand more than just courage. It required the willingness to navigate turbulent waters together. The air shifted, the storm may have calmed, but the undercurrents of unresolved issues remained alive, waiting to pull them back once more. What other revelations lay hidden, waiting to surface? As her family dynamics hovered in the balance, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were only just beginning to scratch the surface of what truly lay beneath. The daunting truth of the past loomed on the horizon, threatening to reshape everything they thought they knew. As the next wave of silence settled, a question loomed ominously. Could they withstand the tidal forces of their shared histories as they plunged deeper into the unknown? The conversation hung in the air like threadbare fabric, ready to fray at any moment. Sarah's resolve felt fragile, yet profound, all at once exhilarating and terrifying. She searched her mother's face for reassurance, but found only the heavy shadows of fear and uncertainty. In that moment, she recognized a shared vulnerability. They were both standing at a precipice, ready to leap into an abyss of memories waiting to be unearthed. "Mom, what do we do next?" she asked, swaying between hope and trepidation. The question broadening their universe, pressing against the walls that had kept them apart for so long. Her mother hesitated, the moment stretching thin before her reply. "Let's start by looking at the past. I have a few things I've kept. They might help us make sense of everything. Or they could complicate it further." Jake met Sarah's gaze urgently, his eyes filled with an understanding that transcended words. "We're in this together," he reminded her softly, as if reinforcing her courage. Gathering her breath, Sarah nodded. "Okay, let's do it." The transition from a conversation of confrontation to one of revelation felt like crossing an invisible threshold, one that would take them into the terrain of raw honesty. They moved together into her mother's small attic, dust swirling as they ascended the creaking steps. Each muffled footfall felt heavy with anticipation, a stark contrast to the lightness of their earlier exchange. Shadows cast strange silhouettes across the cluttered space, a mix of forgotten relics and memories woven into the fabric of their family history. As Sarah rummaged through dusty boxes, she felt her heart race. Each item could bear the weight of a truth too heavy to bear. "What are you hoping to find?" Jake asked, his curiosity both soothing and unnerving. "What's the goal here?" "I just want to understand," Sarah replied, sifting through a collection of old photographs. "Understanding might hurt, but it can also heal. If we know why we are who we are, maybe, just maybe, we can grow." Her voice trembled with the responsibility of change. Her mother joined her, opening a box that had clearly seen better days. Inside lay an assortment of letters tied with frayed ribbon. The sight alone whispered of stories yearning to be told. "These were letters from my mother to yours," she explained. "I never thought to read them before. They might shed light on some things you deserve to know." Sarah felt the electric pulse of discovery surging through her veins. "Can we read them together?" Her mother hesitated, then nodded, the unspoken pact to face the past solidifying between them. As they unfolded the fragile pages, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Each word could reveal not just family dynamics, but the roots of emotional scars that shaped her identity. But as she read through the words, the gravity of the content began to settle in. There were stories of heartache, tales of choices made in dark times, and quiet revelations that peeled back layers she didn't expect to encounter. Each revelation was a puzzle piece, fitting snugly into a larger picture she was only beginning to see. It was raw and unfiltered, a dichotomy of pain and strength. As moments passed, the air thickened around them, and it occurred to Sarah how fragile their collective past was. Yet it bore immense power to illuminate their future. Yet even as she felt that power, a troubling anxiety surfaced. What if some truths were best left buried? Finally, just as Sarah read an especially poignant line, she looked up from the letters, dread coiling within her chest. "Mom, what if we discover something that we can't come back from? What if it's something painful?" Her mother met her gaze, the warmth of shared fear kindling a bond stronger than they had ever shared. "Sometimes the truth divides, but it can also unite." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the sincerity in her tone rang loud and clear. With that shared understanding, they carried on, each delicate word tempting them further into the labyrinth of their shared histories. As Sarah pieced together her family's narrative, the question shifted in her mind. What kind of future could arise when the past finally unveiled itself? Her mother's hand shook as she turned the next page, revealing a name that sent shockwaves through both of them. "Sarah, this changes everything." As her mother's eyes widened in disbelief, Sarah's heart raced in anticipation. What lay ahead would grip them both in a profound way. Would they be able to navigate this newfound truth together, or would it irreparably fracture what they had just begun to heal? The name hung in the air like a scented candle, intoxicating yet unsettling. Sarah glanced at her mother's ashen face, searching for clues in her expression. "Who is this person, Mom? Why does it matter?" "It's complicated," her mother stammered. A brief silence engulfed them, filled with unasked questions and the airs of potential heartbreak. "This letter is from a time I thought I'd left behind. It reveals choices that led us here to now. It could mend our broken pieces or shatter what little we've built." Despite the tumult in her mind, Sarah felt a spark of determination igniting within her. Her mother's troubled past could be a map of sorts, guiding them both through their own emotional labyrinth. "Perhaps understanding these things will allow us to move forward. I need to know," she declared, her voice steady despite the storm of conflicted emotions swirling in her chest. Her mother took a moment, biting her lip as if battling against the tide of her own memories. "Her name was Elizabeth. She had a significant impact on our family. The decisions I made to distance us from her had consequences I didn't foresee, creating rifts that grew deeper over time. I didn't just lose her, I lost pieces of myself." Each word was a building block, allowing Sarah to see her mother not as an unyielding pillar but as a woman with her own fractured identity. "You're saying that misunderstanding her meant misunderstanding your own life?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowing with empathy. "Yes," her mother murmured, folding the letter carefully. "I was frightened. I didn't want to burden you with the complicated history. But perhaps it's now or never to let you in on these truths." As the letter was returned to the box, Sarah felt a weight lifting yet equally pressing down. "What do we do with this knowledge then? Are we prepared for it? You could have told me about Elizabeth long before this. Maybe I thought I was protecting you, or maybe I was afraid of how deep the shadows ran, not just in the lives of those who came before us, but within myself." Her voice trembled as she spoke, revealing layers of fear and regret. Sarah inhaled deeply, feeling the gravity of her mother's revelations. Did she too carry hidden histories and unfinished narratives that awaited their moment to emerge? The thought terrified her, but it was a fear that fueled her desire for understanding. What if I want to explore this? What if there's something important I need to learn about who I am? What if Elizabeth can guide us in ways we haven't discovered yet? Sarah asked, her curiosity blooming into determination. Her mother's gaze softened, though shadows lingered in her eyes. If we delve into this, we must be prepared to face the pain that could arise. But healing often lies on the other side of pain. The prospect excited and scared her in equal measure. Somewhere between exploration and confrontation, Sarah sensed a call to action. Perhaps this wasn't just a journey of uncovering truths, but also an opportunity to shape her identity moving forward. How could uncovering the hidden complexities in her family tree transform her understanding of herself? With every letter read, every shared glance, the connection with her mother deepened, but so did the shadow of uncertainty. Would they emerge stronger, or would they fracture under the weight of unresolved histories? As Sarah craved resolution, she felt something brewing within her, a latent strength ready to unfold. Standing beside her mother, tears threatening to spill, she realized that embracing painful truths could be the soil for her growth. Let's begin to piece together Elizabeth's story, one letter at a time. But promise me, we face every shard together. No more shadows, Sarah said, resolute. Her mother nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. No more shadows, then. Just as Sarah turned to retrieve yet another letter, a thought gripped her, and she looked back, igniting the air thick with anticipation. But if we uncover something truly horrific, Mom, what then? Can we withstand the truth of who we are? The question echoed through the attic, hinting at the myriad challenges that lay ahead. At that moment, Sarah knew they were teetering on the edge of discovery, a cliff from which there could be no turning back. Would their exploration fortify their bond, or would it expose fractures they were unprepared to confront? As they sifted through the box, enveloped by the dust of forgotten memories, Sarah felt a surge of potent anticipation. Each letter they unfolded, marked with faded ink and layered with her mother's emotion, represented a piece of a tapestry Sarah had yet to fully comprehend. It was not just her mother's past. It was a bridge to understanding herself, drawn taut with the tension of uncharted territories. The first letter, yellowed and fragile, crackled in Sarah's hands as she carefully unfolded it. The elegant cursive danced across the page, Elizabeth's voice resonating through the ink, full of dreams and longing. To my dearest Margaret, it began. Her mother's face twisted as if struck by a sudden gust of wind, revealing the pain of old wounds reopening. Sarah focused, determined to dissect every facet of Elizabeth's life, her choices, her heartbreak, and her aspirations. Read it aloud, Sarah urged, watching as her mother silently battled the flood of memories and regret. It seemed trivial to share such intimate words, yet the urgency of understanding overshadowed the reluctance. The silence loomed, heavy with tension. Healing and reconciliation whispered through the very act of acknowledging Elizabeth's existence. Margaret finally acquiesced, her voice soft but quivering with the truth near the surface. As Elizabeth's words unfolded, they painted a picture of longing, a mirror to her own aspirations, interwoven with love, sacrifice, and the haunting specter of loss. It was a story that pulsated with fragility and resilience, striking chords within Sarah she hadn't known existed. She realized with each reading how much of herself had been tethered to this unknown figure. The vulnerabilities shared felt familiar, drumming against her heart like a rhythm she had only ever heard in echoes. She was beginning to chart the roots of her pain, her fears, and her desires through Elizabeth's experiences. What if we discover more about her life choices? What if they're similar to the decisions I'm facing now? Sarah asked, seeking validation from her mother. This wasn't merely about recovering stories. This was an excavation into identity. What if understanding her struggles allows me to confront my own? For Margaret, these questions were complicated. They scratched at tender emotional places. It's possible you may share certain traits, Elizabeth sought love and acceptance. She struggled with her identity in a world that often dismissed her worth. These stories, while heavy, can illuminate your path. Sarah nodded, absorbing the weight of the possibilities. Suddenly, the lines separating past and present began to blur. Could she extract strength from Elizabeth's story, transform the shadows of regret into a foundation? The thought electrified her, but also wove a knot of fear in her stomach. What if her inheritance was a legacy of pain instead of wisdom? As they scavenged through more letters, fragments of Elizabeth's life began to intertwine with thoughts surging through Sarah's mind, igniting her desire for authenticity. Was it possible every unturned stone could transform into a catalyst for growth? But doubts lingered, gnawing restlessly. Was she capable of handling what lay ahead? Sarah caught her breath. She could not deny that facing this truth demanded courage she was unsure she possessed. The fear of unraveling the family history that had shaped her existence loomed ominously, threatening to cast a shadow on her journey. With every breakthrough, Sarah recognized the risk. This digging could lead to deeper fractures, unleash buried pain, or worse, a revelation that altered her very perception of family. And still, she felt the thread of newfound strength urging her onward. She needed to face this descent into the past head-on, regardless of the consequences. "Let's uncover more," she whispered, determination solidifying in her chest like armor. As they reached for another letter, anticipation thrummed in the air like the prepared crescendo of a symphony. But beneath the surface, one thought flickered ominously. What if Elizabeth had harbored secrets that would reshape their lives forever? The allure of uncovering these truths pulled Sarah forward like gravity, but deep inside, a voice echoed a warning. Some truths come with costs that echo across generations, and once revealed, they cannot be hidden again. With shaky resolve, she looked at her mother. What if the next letter shatters everything we believe? Can we handle that? Tension gripped the room, thickening with the electric pulse of anticipated discovery, leaving both women teetering on the edge of an emotional precipice. Would they find the strength to embrace the darkness, or flee from the looming shadows ahead? Sarah's heart raced as she reached for yet another letter, her fingers trembling with a mix of dread and excitement. The faint mustiness hung low in the air, saturating the space around them with the weight of history. Even as the physical boundaries of the room appeared unchanging, the emotional landscape felt as fluid as the tide, shifting under the heavy pressures of revelation. Margaret stood quietly beside her, a mixture of fear and resignation etched into her features. It was clear she was grappling with her own ghosts. As Sarah slowly opened the envelope, she caught the breath of her mother hitching in silence, an unspoken request to tread lightly. The second letter unfolded, revealing words etched decades ago. Each stroke of the pen trembled with the urgency of youthful love, interspersed with tremors of doubt. "Dear Margaret," it began, "the winds of change are fierce, yet it is love that shields us." The matting ink stirred something deep within Sarah. It was as though Elizabeth never truly left them, her hope vibrating through generations. As she read further, the narrative danced between dreams of adventure and stark realities. Elizabeth spoke of choices looming on the horizons of her life, tethered to expectations and the unwavering grip of societal norms. Sarah felt the tug of those pressures too. Here was a woman, navigating a tumultuous world, echoing Sarah's own struggles to find her footing in a corporate job that felt stifling at best and suffocating at worst. In Elizabeth's words, Sarah caught glimpses of herself wrestling with the fear of dissatisfaction, of making choices that limited her own dreams. "Is any of this really relatable?" she whispered, glancing at her mother for affirmation. Margaret took a long, measured breath. She felt confined, as if she was forever trying to weave herself into a fabric that would never truly fit. "You've shared that sentiment." With that acknowledgement, Sarah's resolve solidified into sharp clarity. It wasn't merely Elizabeth's voice resonating, it was the echo of her own unarticulated fears. They were permanently intertwined, two women caught in the same generational dance of searching for acceptance, caught between the desire for freedom and the expectation to conform. What would it take to break free from this cycle? Could understanding Elizabeth's missteps prevent her from repeating them? As she approached the end of the letter, a burning question ignited within her. If the weight of their legacy was composed of fears and failures, could she transform it into a vessel of strength and possibility? She paused, struck by a troubling realization. Elizabeth had loved deeply but had held tightly to her uncertainties, enslaved by the notion that self-sacrifice equaled love. Sarah felt a pang of recognition. She too had sacrificed parts of her ambitions for the sake of others. But was that the measure of true love, or merely a stifling conformity? "Mom, this isn't just a story, it's an opening," she murmured, determination echoing in her voice. Each letter was a blueprint for action, teaching her how to navigate the treacherous waters of her own life. "Do you think she would want me to inherit her mistakes or her courage?" Sarah continued, allowing the reality of the question to linger in the air. Margaret looked at her daughter. The years of distance and disappointment sprawling between them like a chasm suddenly bridged. "Courage is a choice," she replied quietly, "one that needs to be made in every generation. But remember, with courage comes fear." "Then let's confront it together." They exchanged a brief nod, a shared realization that they were not only searching for the truth of Elizabeth's life, but also healing wounds and forging bonds within their own fractured connection. As Sarah prepared to delve into the next letter, the darkness loomed larger but felt less intimidating. With newfound resolve, she was ready for whatever lay ahead. "Is this where we face a truth too heavy to bear?" Margaret's voice trembled, but this time it was filled with a blend of anticipation and understanding. The electric thrum of sisterhood built in the room, amplifying the potential for growth in the shadows of fear. Sarah reached for the next letter, her mind racing with what secrets could unfold, hoping that some light would emerge from this darkness. Was this the moment she realized that breaking free from her family's legacy would require dismantling it first? But as she began to read, a question emerged unshakably in her heart. What would be sacrificed to embrace the path to self-discovery, and would it be worth the cost? The attic was drenched in sunlight as Sarah prepared to unveil yet another letter. The dust particles danced in the beams illuminating the space, and she felt an exhilarating sense of purpose swelling within her. Each letter was a key, lavishly carved with stories, anxieties, and desires waiting for recognition. As she delicately folded the last letter, unraveling Elizabeth's voice yet again, it became a reflection of the woman she yearned to be. "Mom, are we ready for this?" she asked, her voice steady yet charged with anticipation. The fear felt lighter, almost manageable in the face of the truths they were uncovering together. Margaret met Sarah's gaze, an unspoken pact forming in the space between them. "We have to be. This could lead to healing, and that is worth the depth to which we must plunge." The insistent pulse of hope intertwined with her mother's acknowledgement made Sarah feel grounded. They were no longer just mother and daughter. They were partners in unraveling the story that defined their existence. Clenching the letter tightly, she forced herself to remember Elizabeth's journey, marked by not just heartaches but undying courage to face challenges head-on. As she read aloud, words unspooled like threads of shared history, weaving moments of intimacy between them as they navigated Elizabeth's trials and tribulations. With each penned confession, Sarah felt unsettling fears dissolve. Here lay an authentic legacy of love, loss, and resurgence, the fabric of their lives, rich with the possibilities of transformation. Elizabeth had dreams, fierce aspirations, yet she was bound by expectations, Sarah articulated, her voice resonating with a newfound confidence. She navigated a world that often pressed down hard on her shoulders. Can't we learn from her missteps? I refuse to inherit only the burdens of her mistakes. The resolution in her tone bounced off the attic walls, igniting a vibrant energy. Margaret nodded, pride shining through her expression. Your passion is undeniable. We are indeed the descendants of those choices, but together, we can redefine what this means for our lives. Sarah's mind whirred with possibility. Strength and purpose blossomed within her, yet it wasn't merely the tales from the letter igniting her resolve. It was her ability to articulate her understanding of Elizabeth's hardships, recognizing herself in the patterns and ensuring they didn't shape her fate. "I want to reclaim not only our history but our identity," she declared, determined. "Together we can forge something magnificent, bearing the good of our past while rejecting the chains that shackle us." Margaret smiled, the weight of potential hanging in the air. "And to recognize that change requires bravery that surpasses the fears that try to bind us, like those shadows in the attic. We will not allow them to dictate our choices." A silence fell over them, breaking into a chorus of determination. Each acknowledgement brought Sarah's confidence to new heights, lighting the path ahead. She realized that not only could they reshape their family narrative, but they could also resurrect the parts of themselves that had long been silenced, parts longing for acceptance, freedom, and dreams no longer stifled. Venturing forward, they dug deeper into the boxes, letters falling into their hands like seeds of potential waiting to be planted. With every letter, they peeled back the layers of painful truths, confronting and healing their wounds through shared commitments. Each moment they spent unpacking their history bound them closer, unraveling a bond that had been frayed by misunderstanding and distance. As they opened the next letter, a realization washed over Sarah. She was no longer afraid of what the truth might reveal. Not only was she cultivating her own sense of identity, but she was also emerging as a woman capable of transcending her fears. A nurse who had faced raw pain daily, now transformed into a force that could mold her future through reconciliation. In the cluttered attic, amid the shadows of the past, Sarah discovered an unwavering light within herself. It wasn't just Elizabeth's journey she was reclaiming. It was her own. Together, they could rewrite their story, one of resilience and tenacity. "Let this be our legacy," she said softly, glancing at her mother. "An acceptance of our past, a deliberate rise above pain, and a shared vision for our futures." The air shimmered with hope, the storm clouds of uncertainty dissipating. They were no longer afraid of turbulence. They were equipped with the tools necessary to navigate their journey. In fortifying their connection, they began to build a brighter existence, repurposing shadows into landscapes of understanding. This realization brought Sarah immense fulfillment. She stood tall, the echoes of both her lineage and her aspirations ringing through her heart, whispering promises of empowerment. Today wasn't just about confronting their shared past. It was about emerging through it, free to explore the paths only glimpsed before. Now she grasped a vital truth. They could only push forward by honoring the lessons learned while dismantling the chains that held them back. As they sat there, Sarah felt a surge of gratitude wash over her, an understanding that she had evolved far beyond the doubts that once haunted her. She was confident, driven, and ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. They'd finally taken the step to confront their legacy, but more importantly, they had encountered the depths of themselves, ready to challenge whatever storm might come because they stood united and resolute. As the afternoon sun broke into the attic, bathing them in warmth, Sarah allowed herself not just to dream but to act on those dreams. A nurse ready to redefine her life through action and intention. Elation coursed through her as she understood that her energies could not just reclaim her family's power, but could also affirm her rightful place in the world. "Let's rewrite our story," she urged, excitement shimmering in her voice. Together. Sarah and her mother nodded at each other, their commitment unfolding like new beginnings, specific affirmations of change that would last beyond today. Here in their refuge, they transformed a shared journey through the pain of their past into a river of possibilities, guiding them toward a horizon brimming with promise. The journey ahead was theirs to forge, rich in vibrancy, depth, and the strength to conquer every shadow lurking behind. Today marked the birth of a legacy not bound by fear, but fully alive in strength, connection, and an unyielding quest for authenticity. Embrace your journey, Sarah realized. Embrace the truth. And with that lightness of being, Sarah encouraged herself to step boldly into the future, one defined not by the narratives of the past, but by the dreams she was ready to cultivate. So here it stood, a new dawn buoyed by self-belief, illuminating a path ahead vibrant with possibility. This was a new beginning, a dedication to the uncharted, the greatest triumph of all as Sarah transformed into the woman she was destined to be. Emboldened, she emerged as a shining example of personal growth, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. Now, empowered and fulfilled, Sarah knew that the journey ahead would forge its own tale, a legacy of resilience rooted in honesty, unbound by fear, and free to blossom into everything she was meant to be. Don't wait any longer. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help support this journey of transformation. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. And remember to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support. This is the moment.